Welcome to your readings for the last week of August. I am probably sounding like a broken record, but I cannot believe it's going to be September already. It's nuts. And Labor Day weekend at that. It just flew by. This year flew by. But you know what? This year has been a challenge, just a big time challenge. I was talking to a client at the studios the other day, and he's like, I've had nothing but problems. Nothing seems to go right. Nothing seems to go smoothly. Nothing seems to go according to plan. And you know what? That's really how this year has felt. Nothing seems to be going to plan at all in any way, shape, or form. And it's really kind of frustrating. And at the same time, I really kind of felt at the end of last year that 2025 was going to be a year of change. That's true. Lots of changes have taken place. Um, Lots of things are up in the air. Lots of things seem like there's no solution to this mess that we're in, and it just keeps becoming a bigger mess. But at the same time, being such a history buff myself, um this happens a lot. It's happened over and over and over again, and it's what kind of needs to happen in order for change to happen, in order for evolution to happen. And we have to remind ourselves and remember that change is not easy. It's messy. um, it's unpleasant, it's uncomfortable, but hopefully we can find a space where it becomes better. And fingers crossed, right? In the meantime, if it has been difficult and messy, at least it's passing by really, really quickly, right? I guess that's all we can hope for. Oh my God, this phone. All right, I'll get to the readings in just a second. Okay, let's get to these readings. Hopefully, the phone won't ring. And I said that it's going to ring. We'll start with Darcy. Uranus still 1 degree in Gemini because it's just hanging on forever. Does it even get to 2 degrees by the end of the week? Let's see. Let's see. No, still 1 degree Gemini. Uranus takes forever to move anywhere. But it's kind of like an Aquarius. We move in our own pace too. So it is what it is. A couple of things here, though. Uranus has been, really, really helpful here for a while, and now it's starting to move into some challenges here. We still have, well, not still have, we have a grand sextile with Venus, Saturn, and Neptune. Now, that grand sextile has really, Mercury has really been a part of that grand sextile all this time. Now, Venus is sort of moving into place there. Venus is focused being on long term goals. Uranus focused on relationships. We still have Saturn and Neptune focused on those you love. So we're again really bringing people together to focus on your long-term goals. And this is what's important about this is a lot of times when we're looking at trying to create specific goals on our own, it can be really daunting and overwhelming. It's funny actually because I just that phone call that just interrupted me as soon as I first started recording was from the band that I sort of assist to manage, so to speak, who's talking about needing somebody for social media purposes, which is a big deal in marketing when with any entity or company. All of which, you know, as a manager, I kind of sit here and go, God, this has been something that's been on the back of my mind that needs to be done for these guys for a really long time. And, you know, blah, 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 and this and that. And I just don't have the time, you know, to do that. Alternatively, same thing for our in town, the marketing and all that stuff. It's really important. Still, just don't have the time to deal with that stuff. Having other people in those positions to do it makes things so much easier, because then you're not stressed out. You're not trying to do everything at once, and you're, you know, most importantly, the shit is getting done, which is the most important thing. It's not something that's put on the back burner because you just don't have time to do it. So in terms of long-term goals, sometimes it's difficult to get to the point of where you want to be, because you're so overwhelmed with all of the things that need to be done, and you're doing it all by yourself. So having those people coming in and putting those people in those places, organizing those people in those places, can be really, really helpful. Now, also, we have Uranus in a square with the sun, because the sun, of course, is moving into Virgo. Officially, it actually did well today. Today is Saturday, so 1 degree on Sunday, kicking off the week. The sun 1 degree in Virgo. And so, with that being said, mutable, that unfortunately creates a bit of a challenge. And the sun's influencing career right now. And so we're talking about having issues within the relationships of your career. So bosses, co-workers, things like that. And this can be really, really difficult when you're, you know, I mean, it's bad enough that you have to go to work. Okay. It's bad enough that there's parts of your job that just suck and you don't want to do it. It's bad enough that you're doing all this work and not seeming to make enough money, right? To add problems with coworkers to the mix, that just amplifies it and makes it worse. So it's a little bit of a frustration. But by the time we get to the end of the week and the moon moves into opposition with Uranus, this little challenge becomes a bigger challenge on Saturday. And the moon bringing your own personal emotions into the mix, because the moon is in Scorpio, which is a very emotional sign. I'm sorry, moving out of Scorpio into Sagittarius. One's a very emotional sign, one's a very volatile sign. And then on top of it, you know, we're bringing anger issues into the mix. And Mercury is also moving into conjunction with the sun, which is creating more issues. So this kind of reminds me of somebody that comes in and is like the know-it-all, Mr. Know-it-all. They call me Mr. Know-it-all. And this person is coming in and they're just deliberate. It's like deliberately doing whatever they can to make themselves look great and to make you look like a pile of poo. Okay. And I'm not saying that you're a pile of poo, of course. This is frustrating. Anytime this situation comes up, and every single time, for some strange, stupid reason, we think, oh my gosh, I've done such a good job. People are going to see right through this. And they never do. Oh my God. They never do. People never get wise to this crap. I don't know why. It's been going on for centuries now, which is really, really frustrating. But you don't want to blow your lid. The thing is that with narcissism, and people who do stuff like this generally do have to have a touch of narcissism going on around there. The thing about narcissism is this: the narcissist always wants to, it's quietly poking the bear, quietly poking the bear, quietly poking the bear until you explode, to prove that you're the neurotic one. They're perfectly calm. They've done absolutely nothing. Innocent eyes, innocent eyes. They've done nothing. You're the one that's standing over there like a raging lunatic. All right. And you don't want to give them the satisfaction of that. So the more you can stay above that, the better. Is it easy to do? Absolutely not. I've been in this situation a million times. The hardest thing that I ever have had to do in my entire life is to hold my tongue and not respond to somebody like that. But to be honest with you, it's the best thing that you can do, because what you wind up doing is frustrating them to the point where they turn into the neurotic mess unwittingly, right? And that's what you want. You want to basically, they're setting a trap for you. You want to go ahead and get out of the way so they can fall in their own damn trap. To hell with that. Also, having this situation come up again, we've discussed before the possibilities of moving to a different job or something like that. So this is again adding more fuel to the fire on that, because clearly, if you're doing everything that you're doing, nobody seems to be really recognizing it, except for the fact they're just giving you more work to do, and that's it. No more money, just more responsibility. And then you keep doing it, and somebody just sails on in there, and and starts to make you look bad for no reason, and they're falling for it. It's time to move on. Okay, this is whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish here. It's probably not going to happen. And one of the things that I am a big advocate for is time limits. You have to give jobs time limits. If they don't see your worth in a certain amount of time, they're not going to. There's no reason to keep wasting your time and your energy trying to make them see, if that makes sense. The King of Pentacles in reverse. The King of Pentacles in reverse is all about narcissism, a little bit there. Be wary of schemes to make money quickly, as well as stubbornness and possessiveness. Okay. Now, stubbornness, there's that word. There's that word I'm sure you've heard your whole entire life. Being a Taurus, Tauruses are always associated with stubbornness. Okay. Always, always, always. But I also want to just kind of add another layer to this, okay? But be wary of schemes that make money. Of course, if it sounds too good to be true, chances are it probably is. But we don't want to just walk away from it, cut it off, and walk away from it right away, right away. Give it a little bit of time, do a little bit of more research, and then if it does, if something still doesn't seem right, just move along. Thank you, drive through. Just move along. Because chances are, most of the time, it's true. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So that's what I have for you. Moving on to Jeannette. Sorry. Oh my gosh. I had the flu this week. It was horrible. Worst one I've had all year. And I've had a couple. And I cannot seem to get out of just being exhausted all the time. Sense. So pardon my yawning in your reading. Uranus continues to be 1 degree in Gemini, and it's got its good points and its bad points. Still in a grand sextile with now Venus instead of Mercury, focusing on long-term goals, as well as Saturn and Neptune, which are focused on those you love. And Uranus focused on relationships. Now, Uranus is it's all out of the box, very unique. Things are done in a certain way. Your relationships are not like everybody else's relationships. They're very unique. And it's not that, your relationships are unique, but you have a unique relationship with each particular individual. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, having a unique relationship with each individual is helpful towards achieving those long-term goals. And this is a very feminine influence here. So I'm feeling these feminine goals coming along here, We're talking like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. We're talking like a girls' trip, girls' night out. Something very girly happening with your gal pals. Um, or we're talking very creative goals, very airy fairy goals, so to speak. So our goals are not structured. We're not going into the banking business here. We're creating beautiful things and selling them or stuff like that. Your crafting being one of those things. And with the addition of Saturn and Neptune. Now, Neptune is also a very feminine influence, but she's a much older and wiser feminine influence. She's like your grandmother who's been creative, but she's not stupid either. She's learned. She's had to learn the hard way through the school of hard knocks, right? And she's very intuitive, inviting you to really pay attention to that intuition, which is really, really important. Saturn is grandpa. Saturn is all about structure and making sure that things are structured in the correct way, because there's only one way to do it and everywhere else is wrong, right? Both of these influences are retrograded though. And so we're looking at, especially with Saturn, a retrograde Saturn is all about making sure you're not taking on responsibilities that aren't yours. So, for instance, in this goal process, let's say that this is somebody else's idea, right? And you come in and say, oh my God, that sounds wonderful. And I'd love to help you with that. And then the person says, oh, great. I'm so happy that you're here to help me with that. And they just load up half of all the work onto you and goes skipping off to go to the movies. Okay. This is what you want to avoid. Okay. At all costs. Alternatively, if these are your goals that somebody has agreed to help you with, you want to make sure that they're pulling their weight and you're not doing all the work while they're taking all the credit for it at the same time, because that's definitely something that you don't want to deal with, right? It's going to burn you out, it's going to take all the fun out of it, and quite frankly, it's going to zap the motivation to follow through and actually get this done, if that makes sense. Now, Uranus does move into a square with the sun, because the sun officially is in Virgo this week. It moves into Virgo today, which is Saturday. So tomorrow, Sunday, the beginning of the week, 1 degree in Virgo. We're officially moved into Virgo. And Uranus moves into a square with the sun. Now, the sun's focus is on career, where you shine. The fact that you have these unique relationships may be the reason why things are difficult within your career. Because on one hand, it's wonderful to be able to have a different relationship with everybody, but there may be a situation around the workplace where it's really important for you to be a little bit more traditional with these values and not quite so unique and airy fairy, so to speak. Not Neptune, Mercury gets closer and closer into conjunction with the sun, which also uh, moves into this challenge as well. Mercury is very intelligent. We're talking about somebody who's very intelligent. Okay. So, this person who's very intelligent can also be almost confusing you with said intelligence, which is difficult unless you're a Gemini, right? Geminis are smarter than the average bear, and you can see bullshit way before it's actually right in front of you. Don't question your intuition on that. If you feel like something is off about somebody, definitely voice it, because this is only going to escalate until the end of the week on Saturday, when the moon moves into Sagittarius, another mutable sign, and this becomes a T square, a much bigger challenge and a much more emotional challenge to boot, because the moon's focus is all on self, you being the emotional person here. Okay. And you don't want to be the emotional person. When somebody comes in and tries to sideline you in some way, they silently pick and silently pick and silently pick until you explode, and you're the one that's over there looking like a neurotic mess. Okay? That's the goal. That's always their goal. You want to avoid that as much as possible, because avoiding that makes them try harder and harder and harder and harder until their frustration boils up and they become the neurotic mess. That's what you want to happen. Let them step in their own neurotic mess of crap that they just made on the ground, instead of transferring it to you to hold on to for a while. We want to avoid that as much as humanly possible. And the worst part is, the people that they target the most are the nice ones. The ones that want to come and be helpful, the ones that want to come and do stuff for you. People like yourself who have a heart of gold are the ones that are targeted the most by these particular individuals. Put your armor on, your spiritual armor on, put your reflective bubble up, and do not allow them to get to you in that way. You've kind of been there before, been there, done that. Don't want to do it again. Six of Cups is the card that I have pulled for you. And I think this is the card that's all about children take a prominent role here. Six of Cups, children take a prominent role. Old friend from the past will to return, possible reunion. That's always fun. Now, because children are involved and we're talking about narcissists, this could be one of your children actually that's causing the problem right now. And again, continuing to try and bait and bait and bait until you are the one that explodes. So you want to make sure that, of course, to avoid that as much as possible. So that's what I have for you. Moving on to Connie, we officially have Venus in Leo for a time, and we still have Mercury in Leo as well, although Mercury is no longer retrograde, no more shadow period. That's great news. Okay, absolutely great news. But Venus in Leo is great news as well. It's actually, again, we talked about balance between logic and emotion last week, a little bit in your readings, masculine and feminine. And this balance is really, really, really becoming prominent with Mercury and Venus, because one is very masculine and logical and one is very feminine and beautiful and creative. Pardon me. And that's a good thing. Venus is really working hard, actually, also to create some lovely, wonderful things for you. I've got the hiccups all of a sudden, like I've been drinking, which I haven't, except for my coffee. Mm. Venus in a grand sextile with Uranus, Saturn, and Neptune. Saturn and Neptune focused on those you love, both of which are retrograde. Interesting combination we'll get to in just a minute. Uranus focused on relationships, Venus focused on long term goals. Now, a good long term goal that I'm sure would be prevalent to you is building healthy relationships. And we have another balance with Saturn and Neptune both being masculine and feminine at the same time. So this balance between the masculine and the feminine is coming up not once but twice for you this week, because of the way that the planets are lining up. And Saturn is, both planets, both Saturn and Neptune, are retrograde. Now, a retrograde Saturn is kind of interesting because on one hand, it shows that you tend to take on responsibilities that don't belong to you. When you're a trauma survivor, that's just a given. Okay, we don't even need to talk about it. That's just a given. You've taken on the responsibility of everybody else's crap already, right? Neptune is all about intuition. Neptune is our wise old grandmother, whereas Saturn is our wise old grandfather. And not your grandfather, but a better grandfather. And Neptune's all about intuition and utilizing that intuition with the people that you love, which is a game changer. Think about what you're going through with Kailin right now. Your feelings about who he is right now and how he's acting cloud your intuition. It clouds your ability to see what it is that he's going through so that you can understand what he's going through rather than react to what he's going through. The thing is with people, okay, and yes, there should be a balance of good and bad in every relationship. However, that depends on what's going on. It depends on the situation. It depends on the individual. It depends on how old the individual is. Depends on your mindset to a certain extent. When you think about it, you've been through the ringer with your family. The ringer, trauma here, trauma there, trauma everywhere, right? So when Kylan starts to act like a teenager, your inside start to panic that Kylan is turning into the same people that you've had to survive, the trauma people that you've had to survive. And this panic makes you want to put those walls up, makes you want to block that out and protect yourself from having to deal with that and or having to feel that, if that makes sense. So intuition does help sort of move out of that way so that you're not reacting or overreacting to the problem, right? Because let's just face it, there isn't a single person on the planet, not even Kylan, who's 100% perfect. And I know what you're going to say. You don't expect him to be perfect, even though you do think that he is in some ways. But at the same time, your fears of him becoming his father are growing bigger and bigger and bigger by the minute. And those fears could become reality the more you focus your energy on them. So it's really important to avoid that as much as you possibly can. Without doing so, you inadvertently could be responsible for him turning out like his father. And the reason why you could put yourself in that position is that our fears project us and sort of push us to do whatever we can to prevent that. And the more we try to prevent it, the more we seem to create it. It's a very strange thing. Backing off and letting him be who he is and figure out who he wants to be and trusting in the process. That child has something that Sean didn't have growing up, unfortunately, which is a grandmother who's level headed enough to help him learn what's right from wrong. And while he has that information and he knows that information, he's going to be like any other kid being influenced by everybody else around him, not just his father. Okay. His father, that personality that his father has, is prevalent in every single person, it seems, that is walking the face of the earth. So it's not just him. The kids at school, he's being influenced by the kids at school. And you remember how it was at school. You can't be different than everybody else. God forbid you're different than everybody else. Those people get shunned, and it's a miserable existence. So he has to take on the personalities of the people around him. As he gets older, he'll start to understand more. He'll mature more. He'll start to see that he has a choice between being a little shit or actually being a decent human being. And what you want to do instead of fearing him being a little shit is you want to hope and continue to hope and continue to hope that he is a responsible and wise human being as much as possible. And we know that he is. It's already there. Venus's beautiful long-term goals, on the other hand. Now, this to me seems an awful lot like two different things. One, because we've got that balance of Mercury in Leo right now, focusing on career, and Venus focusing on long-term goals. It's what's actually kind of fitting is that Mercury is all about work and all about the details, and focusing that energy on work makes total sense. Venus is creative and she likes things pretty, and she reminds me of your entire house, your entire girly house, right? All about these wonderful goals of things that I would like to do. Now, first of all, know you're working on your health. Very important. Okay. Your physical health. Working on your emotional health is a very important part of that process. So, popped in my mind the other day, what about the wiggles and giggles? That's a wonderful creative thing that you can do that gets you out of the house, that gets you exposed to people, that gets you out there. Um, and takes you out of the house worrying about your health, worrying about your family, worrying about the holes that they're all digging themselves into. Okay, because they are digging themselves in there, that you're not doing it for them, right? And it just changes the energy in your body because you're doing something positive, right? And in turn, it's sort of helping you build relationships in some way at the same time, right? So and with Uranus being a part of this grand sextile, Uranus is all about building relationships in a different way. Okay, we're not trying to go after relationships in the same way that we did before. We want a different way. For example, instead of trying to find that one person who gets you, who wants to be in your life, it's time to learn how to build better acquaintances, people that you can hang out with that make you feel good. But it's not that one ride or die person that you just have to have in your life. Several people who you can hang out with that just you can just have fun with. This is an alternative relationship that will help bring that balance into your life and help improve your emotional health overall. Venus also finds herself in a grand trine with the moon, which is focused on self and your emotional self, right at the end of the week on Saturday. Now, grand trines, several planets working together, in this case, four, because Saturn and Neptune are also part of this grand trine. And the moon adds another emotional element. Now, there's three feminine influences in this grand trine because Venus, Neptune, and the moon, all feminine influences. So it's very creative. This is all about, your emotional self and bringing all of these elements together. Your long term goals are about healing the family, not worrying about the family, healing the family. And I have to keep reminding myself over and over again because, as you know, I'm surrounded by men. I love them all. They drive me insane. And as a woman, like many women before me, I find myself feeling like walked on, unappreciated, um, used up in many different ways. And I am not the only woman in the world to ever feel like this. I am not the only woman in the world to feel overlooked, right? But at the same time, we have to take into consideration that when we're focused on ourselves and how we feel, we inadvertently think that everybody should change what they're doing to make us feel that way. And we forget and have to remind ourselves that it's not their responsibility, even though we can justify that it is, but it really isn't. It's not their responsibility to make us feel worth it. It's our responsibility to make us feel worth it, right? And this is where this grand trine comes in. It's all of this energy towards you, towards building a stronger emotional support system for yourself. It's all about creating um, it's all about creating emotional health, good emotional health for you, right? And the only way to do that, I'm afraid, is to stop thinking about everybody else and what they're doing to you to destroy you. Almost every single individual in the world is the victim of other people. And I think that while we want to think that there are people out there who aren't living this, it's a lie. Okay. It is one great big giant lie. The people that are out there posting on Facebook about how wonderful this person is and that person is, those people are sick, emotionally sick. Okay. Their whole entire worth and existence is wrapped up in what other people are doing for them. Okay. There's never anything about what they're doing for them. It's all about what other people are doing for them. And if you were to look at how that works and how they're getting these people to do this for them, chances are it's not very healthy. Okay. It's not healthy to the people around them. It's not healthy to themselves. Right. So this is all about us becoming stronger, us becoming more emotionally stable on our own. Doesn't mean we don't need people, okay? But people, our relationships with people become better and stronger and healthier when we are better and stronger and healthier in our own emotional health. And that emotional health really does help to counteract that physical health as well. I am pulling the Queen of Cups for you in reverse. And this is very interesting because the Queen of Cups, she can be pretty bitter in this position. And of course, we want to avoid that. We don't want to be, I know you don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that person either. Of course, it's almost a given for most of us, isn't it? Emotions are ruling head. Need to gain a clear perspective. Need to stop living according to other people's desires and stop allowing others to take advantage. And I'll just add also to stop allowing others to take up space when they're not paying rent to do so. So that is what I have for you. I'm going to take a little break and I'll be right back. Okay, moving on to Jenny. We have officially Venus in Leo. I love Venus. She's creative, she's beautiful, she's feminine, she's everything you want to be influencing your long term goals right now. And the interesting thing actually is that Mercury is still technically in Leo, no longer retrograde, no longer causing problems. Although I will say that retrograde has caused some lasting problems, if that makes any sense at all. Not like major ones, but annoying ones. Um, but Mercury is very much focused on career, and Mercury is all about details and information and learning and very much a masculine logical influence. And then you have Venus ruling your long-term goals, which is very creative and beautiful and feminine. And it's kind of an interesting balance here because of course you need that logical masculine energy to really focus on career. But it's nice to look at your goals as something that's creative and feminine. And long-term goals definitely means travel also. So if you've been kind of sort of thinking about planning another trip, this is actually a really good time to do that. Venus is two things. Venus is in a grand sextile with Uranus, which is focused on relationships, and Saturn and Neptune, which are focused on those you love, which is also an interesting masculine feminine balance. This is coming up twice for you guys this week, actually. Saturn, both of these planets are retrograde, whereas Venus and Uranus are not. Saturn is very structured. There's a certain way to do things, and any other way is the wrong way. And Neptune is very feminine, but very wise at the same time. Intuition being a big part of that wisdom, and bringing these elements together. This is not just planning travel plans for you. This is planning. This is travel plans for a group of people. It kind of makes me think of your mom camping trip, actually, where it's a bunch of ladies getting together to have a good time and to just rest and relax and recuperate. And of course, with a mom trip, it's not just one person that's responsible for all of the taking care of everything. You have everybody there to kind of sort of help with the cooking and the ideas and around that and all of that stuff. So this is kind of the energy that's going into this. And while yes, a family trip is definitely something to think about, I'm kind of feeling an office trip at the same time, something that you ladies do together. It doesn't have to be obviously a whole week or anything like that, but a weekend Vegas trip or something for you ladies to just be able to step away from the responsibilities of everything that's going on and just have a good time with each other, because it does get very stressful in the office sometimes. Venus is also in a grand trine with Saturn and Neptune and the moon on Saturday at the very end of this week. The moon coming in, bringing that influence of self and emotional self into the mix right there at the very end of the week and at the very end of the month to boot. And what's kind of interesting about this is this is about embracing your emotional self, really. This is something that we don't really do very often. We all are trying to run away from our feelings, and avoid our feelings. And ooh, I don't want to step in that. I almost stepped in a puddle of feelings. This is not stepping into the puddle accidentally. This is jumping in the puddle and just embracing your emotional self, because that emotional self, there's a lot of creativity in that emotional self. And I think that women in business in particular, we tend to shy away from that part of ourselves. Women who have a toxic or abusive relationship background tend to shy away from that emotional part of ourselves. And bringing all of this together, we're not just looking at the possibilities also of a trip for fun, but a trip that means something very personal to you, something that you've always wanted to do. And I can barely even think of what that is, because you've gone on so many very interesting and wonderful trips as it is. But I still say that there's one there. There's one that's in the background that hasn't been tapped yet. It's that one that you just always wanted to do because it means so much to you. On the other hand, Mercury, the masculine, of course, is causing some problems as he moves into a square with Uranus fairly early on in the week. And Mercury, again, focused on career, while Uranus is focused on relationships. So this is really about those relationships within your office, those career centered relationships. And this can mean problems with a specific person in the office, not getting along. This could be relationships with your clients. Unfortunately, at the very end of the week, the moon also moves into position to amplify this problem at the same time, creating a T square instead. So you have an opportunity to embrace your emotions while you're being emotional about something specific. And I think that, this actually could be the reason why you're sort of thinking of, maybe it's not a bad idea to have a little bit of a work vacation, something to where instead of being all business all the time, you guys can kind of get together, have fun, get to know each other on a different level, not be so structured, not be so strict, be women. Be women who are confidently creative and beautiful and loving, and embrace that, because you are an office full of women, and while that's beautiful and brilliant and creative, that's also an awful lot of estrogen at the same time. It sort of reminds me of the first successful women mixer that I went to, which that very first mixer that we did in Modesto, the very, very, very first one that we put together, 100 women showed up to that mixer. And um, from a background like mine, where I do have girlfriends, and I'm not saying that I don't, but the majority of my friends are men. Um, being the sort of mom of a band at that time, five guys, three sons, a lot of testosterone around me all the time, not a lot of estrogen around me all the time. And the estrogen that I did have around me, I was pretty used to. It was the same two women, that I always kind of had around me, which was kind of a lifeline in all that testosterone. So walking into a room with 100 women full of estrogen was overwhelming, to say the least. It's about the nicest way that I could put it. It was a lot. And I didn't even really realize, I think, until I walked into the room, just how much of an impact, both positive and negative, that really did have on me, honestly. And I tend to be more of a logic minded person at the same time, and not necessarily quite so emotional. So to be around that many emotions at one time was also pretty overwhelming, I have to say. But I also learned from that what I needed to do was get myself acclimated with that. I had literally had been running from that feminine energy for so long, mainly because of my own personal reasons and the issues with women that I had had in my life, that I found this as an opportunity to really kind of embrace femininity as a whole. And it actually really helped in so many ways, in terms of embracing my own femininity, which was a big deal. I At that time, that was not something that I wanted to do. Okay. So I think that this in itself, sometimes, yes, it is a little bit overwhelming, especially when you have a lot of stressed out women in one place. And that's why you have to counterbalance that with some creativity. You have to counterbalance that with some beauty and some love and some, something, because too much of the masculine energy also just gets to be too much after a while. The card that I am pulling for you today is the Eight of Wands. And the Eight of Wands in this position, he's got all these arrows and he's shooting them off. We don't exactly know where he's shooting them off. And actually, what's interesting in the picture is that he's shooting one, but you see three. You see three that are already in the air, ready to go, which to me is a little bit interesting. Message or news, opportunity to expand or grow. What's really interesting to me is the first thing that I think of when I read that is that Monty Python in the Holy Grail, where the knight's assistant guy gets hit with an arrow that has the piece of paper on it. He just goes, "Message for you, sir," which kind of lines up with this. So this message or news, opportunity to grow. Of course, you always, there's like a balance here where on one hand you're just like, another opportunity that I have to consider, and yet at the same time this is an opportunity that I don't necessarily think is work related, could be around these creative goals. So it's definitely going to be something to think about, something that you don't want to just put down because you want to put it down, if that makes sense. So that is what I have for you. I'm going to pause again, be right back. Moving on to Linda. I think we have an appointment tomorrow to chit chat. Let me see. Let me see. Pretty sure we do. I hope it's tomorrow and not next Sunday. Yeah, it's tomorrow. Thank goodness. Next Sunday sucks. Just crazy, craziness day. But it is what it is. It's Virgo season. Yay! It's Virgo time. And boo! Of course, the sun is moving into challenges with other planets because, of course, that's what it does. You got a 50-50 chance whether or not it's going to work with the planets or not work with the planets. And we are siding with not working with the planets as it moves into Virgo today being Saturday. And right as it's moving into Virgo, moving into a square with Uranus. Now, this continues all week long and should be broken up by next week because Uranus is really sitting at that 1 degree cusp there in Gemini, which of course is another mutable sign. The sun, of course, is going to move out of that pretty quickly on next week. So we're not going into September with it, too far into September, anyways, maybe a day or two. Which is good before it breaks up, but not before it wreaks a little bit of havoc, of course, before it does. And then we have Mercury following suit pretty quickly afterwards, not this week, but next week, where it's already in that square with Uranus by the end of the week. So we'll have the sun is going to put it down and Mercury will take it up, unfortunately. So that challenge probably will be with you for a couple of weeks there. Not too big of a deal. A square is just a little challenge, not a huge thing. And it more of a frustration, I think, than anything, because the sun's house is where you shine. The sun is focused on career, of course, and in a square with Uranus, which is focused on relationships. So we're specifically talking about relationships, career related relationships. This could be your job, but this also could be more of this, leftover muck from Toastmasters, kind of sort of coming up and rearing its head a little bit. Just frustration. And I think that the biggest thing that comes from this frustration is, my feeling of you just kind of standing there going, why can't people just stop acting like this? And the problem is that it really feels like the more you say that, the more people start acting like this, which is really frustrating, right? But this is all part of that lesson too, in people being people and just letting people be people and be who they are. They obviously, if you're trying to get any work done, it makes it more difficult. And that's where the challenge comes in. Of course, you want people to be like you, then things run smoother. But people all have their differences for a reason. And while we see that difference, if the difference is a big difference, meaning they don't work like you, then we kind of interpret that as, if they don't work like me, then I want nothing to do with them. But instead, we have to harness those differences, I think. Some people are not quite so structured, they're more creative. And that creativity is really necessary in some capacity. So maybe instead of this being a frustration, we can flip this around to work in our favor. Instead of trying to get these people to be more like you, more structured like you, find what they're good at and harness that as much as you possibly can. This challenge, this frustration, is heightened on Saturday next week, a week from today, when the moon moves into a square with the sun as well. So this actually becomes a T-square, a much bigger challenge. Luckily, a short-lived one, which is good. The moon's focus is on self. So this is all about getting emotional, you getting emotional. And this is why this lesson is so important, I think, because when we um, when we don't harness the differences between each other, we get frustrated. That frustration builds up. Pretty soon we lose our stack. Everything, we get overly emotional about it. And the overly emotional, being that this is in Sagittarius, is usually a blow up, right? So we want to try and avoid that for a multitude of different reasons. One, it's not good for the relationship. Two, it's not good for you personally, physically, mentally, emotionally. If we were to instead, this is the way that it normally goes, is this person is useless and you just keep looking at how useless they are, right? Because they're not operating the way you want them to operate. I'm smiling because I'm seeing this in my own environment here, both with myself as well as others around me. And instead look at them and try and help them be successful in their way. It reduces the frustration for you, it reduces the frustration for them, and you can find some sort of way to work together to where you create a balance between their creativity and their kind of whim of how they do things and your structure, which balance is always a beautiful, beautiful thing, right? So this is really the story for the week here. And yes, you could avoid most of that frustration with that T-square. Granted, there's always some frustration that comes up and some little bit of emotional outburst here and there, but it doesn't have to it doesn't have to be huge. We're talking minimizing it here as much as we possibly can. And the more that you are able to minimize it, the easier and better it goes, for sure. And you never know, you might learn something yourself while teaching them at the same time, which is always the goal, right? I think those of us that run 1,000 miles a minute also, that's something that we tend to miss a lot, is people are not at the same, when people are not at the same level, it means that they're moving at a slower pace. What they're gaining moving at that slower pace, we're losing trying to move 1,000 miles a minute. So that's why these people are put into our lives as part of the lesson, is to kind of sort of for us to teach them to speed up the process just a little bit, and for them to teach us to slow down and smell the flowers, because it's that slow smell the flowers time that the ideas flow through, and we start to see things in our path that we may have been missing all of this time, which is very, very important information. Okay, we have, the King of Cups here. I've got a kitty wants to come and lay on me and make me all nice and hot. There you go. The King of Cups. Now this is very interesting. You're not a King of Cups kind of a person. You're more of a King of Pentacles kind of a person. Ow! The Earth King, the king that gets things done. The King of Cups is all about emotion. And the King of Cups leads with his heart. He's all about structure, yes, but allowing that creativity to come through as well. He understands his people rather than rules over his people. He wants to feel what they're feeling so that he can fix the problems for them. And this is really important. And I think in any leadership role, this is one of the most important things that a lot of leaders tend to forget, is that leadership is not about guiding people. It's about understanding people. So that's what I have for you. That's very interesting. Moving on to Matalyn. Let me just show you. Baby cuteness. Baby goodness. Now that he's in here, he's going to be a little butt munch and want to play with everything that's on the desk, specifically my pen. It's going to be on the floor any minute. Any minute. It's Virgo season. In case you haven't noticed, today, Saturday, is the beginning of Virgo season. 30 whole days of Virgo season. Virgos all over the world are partying it up like it's 1995, and it's awesome. That means the sun is officially in Virgo, yes, and its focus is on career. And while that is a wonderful thing, of course, it comes with some challenges as it comes into Virgo in a square with Uranus, which is focused on relationships. Now, Uranus is a very out of the box influence. Uranus does not follow the crowd. Okay, think of Aquarius when you think of Uranus, because Uranus is Aquarius's ruling planet. Aquarians are known as being weird. I hate the fact that they keep using that particular word, okay, but they do, because everybody, we're not weird. We don't think that we're weird. It's everybody else that thinks that we're weird. That's why they keep using that word. Weird means they don't understand. Aquarians are just different. They're just built different. And Uranus is harnessing this difference within your relationships right now. And it's your success in career and being different that are clashing right now, right? In terms of relationships being a little bit different, this doesn't mean that you have a bunch of weird relationships. It means that your relationships with each individual are different. And that's not a bad thing necessarily. Or it could mean that you're having trouble. Ow! Where's my nipple? You're having trouble being able to harness that difference within those relationships. Oh, I see you're going after my hair, you little shit monster. You little shit monster. Oh, come here. Come here. Come here. Let's get some cuddles. Yes. Oh, there we go. Oh. Okay. Or you're having trouble having relationships that are different. For example, you have your girlfriend and she's a little different for sure. I mean, I did talk to her about her astrology, and she's got a lot of influences that are vastly very different. And so, as an individual, she's very different than most people, which is not a bad thing. And the relationship that you have with her may not be the same, or can't be the same as the relationship that you say have with your boyfriend, that you have with Daniel, that you have with your cousin Joey up there, for instance, or any other friend. And sometimes when you have a friendship with somebody like that, it's hard to be able to hang out as a group because not everybody embraces the difference in a person like this, right? When it comes to career, which is really what this is around, this is about being able to have different relationships with different types of people. Virgos, some do, some don't. It really depends on the individual Virgo. Some Virgos, like John, for example, John can be friends with anybody. Okay, literally anybody. As long as they're not a total douchebag, he can hang with them and be friends with them, right? But he used to be the kid that would see the kid that was, just kind of sort of standing apart from the other kids and really unable to, he was shy and unable to just jump in there and have fun with the other kids. He'd pull that kid in and he'd make that kid comfortable and he'd make that kid feel welcome, right? Other Virgos tend to be kind of nose up in the air. They're perfect and therefore they can only hang with a certain sort of person. You don't want to be that Virgo, okay? Nobody likes that Virgo. After a while, that Virgo becomes very, very, very annoying to be around. So, with that being said, if you are a stuffy type of Virgo, this is going to be very difficult when it comes to building any type of career. You have to be friendly, but you can't necessarily not be who you are at the same time. So, you have to kind of find a balance between the two. This issue gets amplified in a week at the very end of the week on Saturday, which so happens to be the aforementioned John's birthday, by the way, when the moon moves into Sagittarius. And suddenly things get emotional. And we're talking Sagittarius here. So we're talking violently emotional or aggressively emotional because that's what Sagittarius is all about. You are just a little shit. Hold on. Let me get my hair out of your way because I'm tired of you going after it. Oh. Oh. Mm. Violently emotional. Yes. I don't mean violent as in somebody's going to die. That better not happen. Okay. What I mean is, Scorpio is emotional. Cancer is emotional. Pisces is emotional. The fire signs, they lash out when they're emotional. The emotion is not sadness as much as it's anger, right? And so this becomes a problem when you can't control your anger, okay? We all need to learn to, I wouldn't say control our feelings. That's a really bad way of putting it. If children were taught emotional management as children, they'd be more well-rounded adults. Because unfortunately, the way that it's portrayed in society these days is if you're upset about something, please by all means take it out on everybody else, and then use the fact that you were traumatized as a child as an excuse. That's how we deal with our emotions. That's not the right way to deal with emotions. As you can see, it's ruining the world and society and people as we know it, right? It's not making things any better. If anything, it's making things a whole lot worse. So we want to try and manage that, not for everybody around us, but for ourselves. That's what's really, really important. So when things get really frustrating and they blow up, you have a choice in that moment. You can blow up and see what happens. Chances are it's going to be a big old fight. People aren't going to be talking to each other, and it's just gonna be another one of those times. Or you can choose a different reaction, a reaction that might diffuse some of that blow up and quite possibly make a difference in fixing the problem rather than continuing the problem. There is an element of the problem with your mom's drinking. Okay. To her, it's not a problem. To you, it's a problem. To your dad, it's a problem. Maybe even to her, it's a problem, but to her addiction, it's not a problem. And that's what you have to understand. This is an addiction. Okay. And anybody who is an addict is going to say, no, it's not. Let's see addiction talking. Okay. The more you fight this addiction, the more the addiction fights back. And if you talk to anybody else who's an addict, you would see the exact same pattern continue, right? This could be with Mark, and I'm not saying that he's an addict or an alcoholic. Okay, my only um, experience with him is when he was here. And do I have an opinion on that? Not necessarily. Okay, I heard some things I didn't like. I will say that. But my personal experience with him is when he had enough, he went outside and he went to sleep. and he was fine. Okay, so the last thing you want to do is fight with an addict. You are not going to win. Okay, let me repeat myself. You are not going to win. Even with a recovering addict, and I have some experience in this, my dad was a recovering addict for over 20 years before he died. Okay, that mentality of fighting against people to have what he wants never goes away. So you have to try another tactic, another way of getting through, because brute force does not work. Okay, all it does is exhaust you, it exhausts them, everybody gets angry and offended, and then all of a sudden you do it all over again, right? Five of Cups. This card comes up in these readings a lot, and the biggest thing about this card is these cups right here. He's got 5 cups, 3 of which have fallen over, and all the water has spilled out. And he's probably mad that this happened. And instead of being mad, he could just refill the cups. The stream, the water is right there, right? Right there. Where did my little book go? Oh, no, no. What did I do with it? Oh my goodness. Oh, it's right here. I'm trying to take it away from the kitty. 5 of Cups in this position indicates hope for the future. Learn valuable lessons from the past. You know, the big thing about being a human being is that we're all here to learn lessons. We have experiences, we learn from them. If we don't learn from them, we repeat them over and over and over again until we get sick and tired of repeating them. The best thing that you could do for yourself is stop repeating them. That's what I have for you. Moving on to Regina. Regina. We have some moon action in Scorpio this week. Yes, we do. As Scorpio moves, no, Scorpio doesn't move. The moon moves into Scorpio on Wednesday. Yes, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Scorpio moon time. Um, of course, we've got Juno and Vespa and the dark moon and all of that mess in there. Everything focusing on self. But the moon coming in on Wednesday comes in bringing emotional triggers up to the surface, which is really annoying. Okay. Nobody wants to deal with triggers. Nobody walks in and says, "Oh, yay, it's trigger time. I'm so excited." No, nobody does that. Okay. Nobody says, "Yay, triggers. I get to learn something." Nobody does that. Okay. Instead, we get angry. We lash out at the situation that's triggering us. Because it's triggering us, we fight it. Why? Because we've been traumatized, and that's what we've learned to do, is to fight what is traumatizing us, right? And that's, of course, obviously not going to work at this point in this stage of our lives. We should know that by now, right? These triggers, of course, amplifying things when the moon moves into a square with Pluto, which is focused on the mind and how the mind works. And Venus, which is focused on long term goals, specifically very creative and feminine long term goals. And the mind working against you does not help us achieve those long term goals, does it? No, that stinking thinking always gets in the way, right? So we want to avoid that like the plague as much as possible. And emotions coming in, it creates stinking thinking right off the get-go. Think about it. You could look at somebody, and I think we've discussed this before. You could look at somebody. Well, at one time you looked at your husband and you just loved him. Everything about him. Just wanted to be with him all the time, right? when he starts creating problems, when he starts, money situations that you have to deal with and fix, and, all of these problems, and it's causing you stress. And the more those problems happen, the less you start looking at him and going, oh gosh, I just think he's so cute and I want to spend all my time with him, right? No, you're looking at him and you're like, oh, I just want to punch his stupid face for doing all these things and making these stupid choices, right? Your mind is heavily influenced by how you feel in the moment. And when you come from a toxic trauma background, that mindset sticks and it doesn't want to go away. And we have to force it to go away. We have to be mindful of it. We have to say, okay, I don't want you to stay here. I want to change my mindset into something that works a little bit better, that's a little more successful, that allows me to be more successful. The person that goes into an audition and say, I'm not going to stop until I get what I want, is eventually going to get what they want. A person who goes into an audition and says, there's no way that this is going to happen, chances are it's not. And they're probably not going to go into another addiction. I was just talking about addiction. Sorry, audition. So we want to make sure that our mindset is in the right place, a successful place. Because, and I've been doing this for years now, every single time you approach something, your mind is going to give you a million reasons why it's not going to work. And this is going to continue through into Thursday. But as we move into Thursday, the moon moves into a grand sextile with the sun and Jupiter. Now, Jupiter's all about growing and expanding those long term goals, and the sun's focus is on career, it's on career success, it's on shining in your career. So, this is kind of giving us a choice. Do we wallow in self pity? Do we wallow in what happened and all the reasons why we're here? Or do we leave that behind and focus on what we can do, what we can accomplish if we just put our minds to it? And yes, there's going to be setbacks. There's always going to be setbacks. As you're on the road to success, somebody is going to throw a wrench in that. Somebody's going to throw a rake in the ground that you're going to step on, and it's going to whack you in the face. And that's going to cause you to step back and not be able to move forward for a minute because your eye is swollen and you can't see, right? But that's okay. Give yourself a few days for that swelling to go down and then keep going. It's not about how quickly you get there. The most important thing is getting there, period. Continuing to put one foot in front of the other until you do. I have an adorable kitten on my lap right now. I'm actually not looking at my crotch and smiling. This little guy is super cute, as well as super scrappy right now. Huh? Yes. As we move into Friday, he doesn't like the fact that I'm moving at all. As we move into Friday, the moon continues or moves into a square with Mercury. Now, Mercury is no longer retrograde, thank goodness. We have tons of, I have several reminders of that Mercury retrograde that still haven't gone away yet, including for some reason, these ads just keep popping up on my phone and I cannot figure out how to get rid of them. I don't know where they came from. They just appeared one day. Very frustrating. Um, but Mercury is focused on career, and the moon is now focused on self and, of course, your emotional self, which does not necessarily line up with a successful career, right? Especially because only the last 35, 40 years have women really been having a career, right? And we set out to have that career and prove our worth in those said careers by having to be like men, because we can't be ourselves. We can't be emotional people and have a career. There's no place for emotion in career. We need to redefine that, by the way, because that's not necessarily true. But it's being emotional, and that being emotional getting in the way of being successful at work, which is a problem. Now, two things, okay? First of all, you're half Libra. Libra is an air sign. Air signs are more logical than emotional, although Libra is the more emotional of the three air signs. But still, you can harness that air. Harnessing that air means to flip that switch on your emotion for later. So you're not swallowed up in it. Whereas water signs tend to almost feel like they're being washed away by their emotions in some way, which is kind of frustrating. Look at this. Look at how cute he is. Oh my goodness. Also, the moon is still in a trine with Jupiter. Jupiter's all about expanding those long-term goals. Maybe that these emotions don't belong in your career. They belong in your long-term plans. Okay? Because those long-term plans mean something. You're focusing that energy on something that means something to you. Whereas your career doesn't really mean anything other than a paycheck. And when a career doesn't mean anything other than a paycheck, it's really hard to keep it going. It's really hard to keep the resolve up. It's really hard to keep that fake smile on your face. And that's why you need to put that energy into those long term goals. We get to be like kitties. Kitties don't sweat over that stuff, they just do what they want. I want to play. I want to sleep. I want to eat. I want pets. I want loves. They just do what they want. Now, obviously, they don't have to pay rent. But we still can be a little more like kitties. Mm, 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 mm. Okay. Lay down right here. Lay down. Okay. Let me pull a card here. It's getting warm. It's getting warm. Here we go. It's getting warm. And having this little fur ball isn't helping. The reverse tower. Now, the reverse tower is not the same as the regular tower. Thank goodness for that. Oh, man. He likes to play with my glasses. The reverse tower is stuck in a rut or in an unhappy situation, unable to make a change. Now, all of this emotion, all of this tension, that's where it stems from. It stems from being stuck in this place that you feel like you just can't get out of. And being a Scorpio, which is a fixed sign, this is very common for fixed signs because cardinal signs, mutable signs, they don't like to sit still. Fixed signs could sit in the same place for hours and be perfectly happy, never moving until they're unhappy. The problem is that unlike the other modes, they don't get up and do anything about it. They sit there and they wallow in their unhappiness, right? And this doesn't help the situation. We need to get up and do something about it. Even if It's something very, very small, a tiny little change. Instead of, for example, when I was still living in Modesto, I'm a fixed sign also, Aquarius being a fixed sign as well. And when I was living in Modesto, I got very stuck in the rut of never leaving home because I didn't work. But if I did leave home, I just went to the grocery store that was around the corner, or the Walmart that was across the street from the grocery store, still around the corner, or down the street to the cigarette store, which is down the street from. Okay, we had a little blip there. Um, as long as we're still recording, that's okay. Okay. Hopefully, it's not two separate ones. Um, that was fine for a while, and then it got really boring, and it started to get unmotivating, and it started to feel like it was really dragging me down after a while. And I really had to kind of shake things up, you know and coming back out here to the bay, where things are a little bit more spread out, but not so spread out that it feels like it takes you forever to get anywhere. It just changed the energy of everything. Of course, I also added new things to do, new things to accomplish, new goals to create, and the energy changes. So it's not always about removing yourself from where you are. It's also about the choices that you make that help you get out of that rut, so it doesn't feel the comfort zone that you've put yourself in doesn't start to feel like a jail cell either, if that makes sense. So that's what I have for you. Moving on to Theresa. We have some moon action in Scorpio this week as the moon comes into Scorpio on Wednesday. Oh my goodness, you little shit. The moon comes into Scorpio on Wednesday. Look at this. Isn't he cute? Actually, he's becoming a lot less cute than he was 5 minutes ago. Moon comes into Scorpio on Wednesday, bringing some emotional triggers with it, and not in a fun or pleasant way either. You don't play with that, play with it down there. Have fun. Um, Triggers are not fun. Nobody wants to be triggered. Nobody wants to deal with triggers. Period. That being said, we can't get away from it, right? It happens. It's always going to happen. The moon's T square with Pluto and Venus doesn't help that either, because these triggers are holding you back from your long term goals, specifically creative goals. Now, Pluto's focus is on the mind and how the mind works. And when you have a negative mindset, of course, that's going to hold you back. We both know that. That's not news to either one of us, right? But triggers throw you into that negative mindset. And this challenge is actually a beautiful opportunity to be able to overcome that particular challenge in terms of um, mindset, and how much mindset plays a part in our success. Now, you're a very driven individual, always got your hand in something, right? In the creation of something, which is a good thing, a beautiful thing, right? But we all also face those times where we feel like we're not good enough to do something. We're not good enough to succeed in something. And so when we get into that mindset, we become almost completely taken over by it. And our mind starts to look at what we're trying to do and tell us that there's no way that we're going to be able to accomplish that. We're not good enough to accomplish that, blah, 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 blah. And these triggers really kind of play into that or even cause it, to be honest with you. So instead, we want to try and focus our energy in a more positive direction. And that mental energy, especially, we need to try and focus into a more positive direction. Therefore, this is an opportunity to do just that. When you get into that negative mindset, it's really hard to get out of it. But we have to be the ones to remind ourselves that we don't want to live there, that it's not going to help our success, right? And I think you're really good at this. But sometimes the deeper the emotion, the harder that is. As we move into Thursday, this doesn't change, but the moon moves into a grand sextile with Jupiter and the sun. The sun's focus is on career, Jupiter's focus is also on long term goals, and we're talking about growth and expansion of those long term goals, which is really, really important, of course. And so it adds a different element to it, right? Whereas Venus is very feminine, feminine is very emotional. Emotional has a tendency to be sort of overwhelming, right? Jupiter is like, no, we're coming up with a plan and we're doing this, right? We're doing this. And the sun is like, you're darn right, we're doing this. So it's basically having this problem and doing it anyways, not allowing it to hold you back, but saying, I'm going to push through this emotional place that I am right now, and I am just going to go for this. I am just going to make the miss, so to speak, and be everything that I want to be, everything that I set out to be. A lot of people have a hard time with this. I think that you, again, you have done this so many times that it becomes second nature to you. I think the problem this week is not so much that it's happening, but that it feels like, why am I going through this again? Why do I keep having to go through this again? Why ask why? It's part of human nature. It's part of why we're here in the first place. And it's very important that instead of asking why, we ask ourselves, what am I denying myself? And what can I feed myself that will help make me feel better in a healthy way, always in a healthy way? By Friday, the moon's last moments in Scorpio change a little bit as the moon does move into a square with Mercury, which is focused on career. So now we're having some issues there within our career, emotional, being emotional. And Mercury is all about facts and statistics and let's just get this work done. And that sometimes feels like those two things don't necessarily resonate or work together very well. So we want to definitely find a way to, instead of trying to not be emotional, so that we can move past that and be successful in our career, find a way to harness those emotions into your career. A balance of both is always needed. We have to be logical and emotional. That's the best way to be successful. The moon is also continues to be in that trine with Jupiter. So this balance really helps you to be able to expand on those long-term goals as well. So this whole lesson here is not about not being emotional. It's about being successful while you're being emotional and being okay with being successful while you're being emotional. Not everybody can do it, but I know that you can. In fact, I know you probably already wrote the book on it, to be honest. Okay, I'm going to pull a card for you here. And the card that I'm pulling is the Seven of Swords. And the Seven of Swords, swords are strength. They're the air sign of the minor cards. They represent strength and logic to counterbalance some of those emotions also. And the Seven of Swords in this position indicates tricky situation requiring great care. Treachery and deceit also are a part of this as well. Now, emotions can be deceitful and tricky also at the same time. So that's one thing that also could play into it. But we also want to make sure that we look at the reality of emotions clouding our judgment or clouding what we're seeing in front of us. If we are emotional, there could be a tricky situation in front of us that we're not seeing. So that's why balance is really, really important. And why emotions, when we try and avoid them or just put them on the back burner and don't give them any, any time or effort or anything like that, they don't go away. They get worse. We get more emotional. The more emotional we get, the more clouded our judgment becomes, right? Finding time to sit with your emotions, embrace how you feel. Don't feel bad about how you feel. Don't run away from how you feel. Embrace how you feel. Part of that is intuition. Part of that is where intuition comes from. Part of that also is acknowledging and embracing how you feel and comforting those feelings so that you can move on from them and therefore avoid being clouded in your judgment when working with others. Because when we're in that, let me just put it this way, when I'm at the airport driving around on my little tractor out in the parking lot, when I am on my A game, so to speak, I'm always paying attention, right? I'm at the airport in Oakland where people drive like it's the Indy 500, okay, in that parking lot, right? When I'm obsessing in my head over something that's pissing me off, I can't even tell you how many times I've almost been hit by a car because I'm not paying attention, right? And that's what emotions do. They cloud our judgment. And instead of just sitting down and dealing with how I'm feeling before I go to work, I try to avoid it and then it gets stuck in my mind and I'm sitting in the hamster wheel of it and it doesn't do me any good. It's not going to do you any good either. So that's what I have for you. Moving on to Jillian. Mm. Did I show you this cuteness last week? Oh, he's super cute. He's also super warm. There we go. You just lay down there. Okay. The moon comes into Scorpio this week. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, basically half the week of emotions. It's so awesome, isn't it? Yes, no, not. And yet, beautiful at the same time. We don't give our emotions nearly enough credit. Okay, we do not give our emotions the credit that they deserve. Emotions are here for a reason. The problem is that some of us either, like myself, try to pretend that we're not emotional at all, which is not true, or some of us have a tendency to feel like we are too emotional and can't stand it, and so we try to avoid it as much as possible. Either way you're looking, neither one of those is a good idea. We're to embrace how we feel. Our emotions are here to tell us something. They're here to teach us something. They're here to validate why we're doing something. And they're here to help us make choices to change things that are not working for us, if that makes any sense at all. On Wednesday, the moon comes in focusing on triggers, bringing up emotional triggers in a T square with Pluto, which is focused on mindset, and Venus, which is focused on long term goals, specifically creative long term goals. And what's interesting about this is emotions definitely change our mindset. If we're thinking about an idea, for example, we're going to use your crocheting as an example. If you're thinking about the things that you could make and the things that you could sell and building up a creative business through this one thing that you're starting, right? And you think up a store and you think up all the things selling and all of that stuff, and it's a great idea and this is what you're going to do. Awesome. But then you open up a store for a week and nobody buys anything, which is probably going to happen, by the way. And then you get emotional about it and it's triggering. All of a sudden, that trigger says, nobody likes you or your stuff, which, by the way, comes from somewhere else, right? It's not the reality, it's the trigger talking. That changes your mindset. You go from being excited about doing this to, why did I even bother doing this? Because I'm not good enough, right? This happens to everybody, by the way. This is not just a you thing, this happens to everybody. Negative mindset gets in the way of everyone, okay? It's gotten in the way for me numerous times. I can't even count how many times. So, when we are being triggered, it triggers that negative mindset immediately. And that negative mindset says, there's no way you're going to achieve this goal, way out of reach. Some people can do it, not you. Just not true. As we move into Thursday, that issue continues, but the moon moves into a grand sextile with the sun and Jupiter. Now, Jupiter is also focused on long term goals, growth and expansion of long term goals, while the sun's focus is on career. Okay. Now, these triggers, these emotional issues actually have a purpose and can project you forward into success depending on how you use them, right? If you're sitting there wallowing in it, obviously it's not going to be very successful. But if you were to say, for instance, sit there and you're feeling and go, you know what? I don't want to feel like this anymore. I don't know, there's a lot of people out there that don't want to feel like this anymore either. I'm going to become a therapist. And you start to go to school to become a therapist to help other people like you not feel like that, right? Learn how to overcome that in your own schooling and teach others how to overcome that at the same time. I'm not saying that you are going to be a therapist, although you would be a great one. You would be a great one. But it mainly as an example, it's taking something painful and turning it into something beautiful to help other people do the same thing. And it's counterbalancing it. And this is why this is happening. It's showing you that your emotions don't have to bury you or drown you. You can use them to help other people. And of course, in the meantime, as you're doing that, you're helping yourself at the same time. As the moon is on its way out of Scorpio on Thursday, it moves into a square with um, Mercury, which is kind of interesting because Mercury's focus is all about career, and Mercury's all about numbers, facts, details, machines, everything that has to do with, the masculine logical process of putting a business together. And when you're in a creative business, you need that logical counterbalance there. And if you can't do that, finding somebody to help you is definitely a good idea. Okay. Creatives aren't logical, and overly logical people aren't creative. So we have to find that balance. And if we, if we can't find it within ourselves, we bring somebody in to balance that out, if that makes sense. And that's where the struggle is when you're in a creative business. Look at musicians, for example. They're creating their music. That's great, right? But success in the music business isn't just about creating the music. It's about videos. It's about social media. It's about getting a manager to manage your schedule, and and interviewing record labels to determine which one is not going to screw you over out of your money and all that stuff. There's a lot of logical masculine properties in being a successful business that's sort of centered around that creative part of the business, if that makes sense. But the moon is still in a trine with Jupiter, all about expansion and growth in your long term goals. And so this, again, brings that masculine feminine balance also. When you're not focused so much on money, but focusing on the growth of your business, it makes a huge difference. Because a lot of times when you're focused on the money aspects of it, focusing on money seems to slow the process down. Focusing on growth makes things a little bit easier. I tend to do this with readings. If I need the money and I'm like, I've got to get readings right now because I need this amount of money, I don't get any readings. If I let the business flow the way it needs to flow, then I get the clients. The clients just come to me. That's all there is to it. And the money is a perk. It still comes. But I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for, send me the people that need the help. And they send me the people that need the help. And the money is just a byproduct of that. Strength. I love this. I think you got this card last week too. Strength to rise above anything. You're a very strong individual. Stronger than you think you are. Stronger than you know you are. You have the strength to do this. And when you second guess yourself, your dad is literally sitting there going, no, you are stronger than you think you are. He made you stronger than you think you are. The circumstances that took place in your life growing up have made you stronger than you think you are. I don't go around being angry because I had an abusive piece of crap stepfather, or a family member that decided that it was okay to sexually abuse me. I don't sit around and be angry about that. You know why? Those things made me who I am today. I've learned by watching other people who have not gone through the same circumstances, who've had childhoods with both parents, who are still there and still together, and grandparents down the street who got almost handed everything they want. You know what they do? They trust too much. They can't identify narcissism when it's staring them blatantly in the face. They assume that everybody means what they say, and they put themselves in seriously messed up positions because of it. Okay, I am grateful to those two men. Those two men and my messed up mother have taught me who to avoid in life in order to be successful. They've helped me define what success is for me, not what society says it is, but what it is for me. And those are very, very valuable lessons. And you have been taught those same lessons yourself, darling. So that's what I have for you. Moving on to Amber. The moon comes into Scorpio this week, which means we have something other than Juno and Vespa to talk about. Thank goodness for that. Because I don't know about you, but I'm tired of talking about them. They're boring. That's all there is to it. No, they're not really boring. I'm just kidding. I love you, Juno and Vespa. But the moon, no, the moon comes into Scorpio this week, and it's actually very interesting how it comes into Scorpio this week because it's coming into Scorpio on Wednesday, really focused on triggers, bringing up emotional triggers. And those emotional triggers, as the moon is coming into Scorpio in a T square with Pluto and Venus, that just heightens the problem because the T square is a pretty big challenge. Pluto's focus is on mindset. When you're talking about emotional triggers, that's definitely going to trigger a negative mindset, which we're all wired pretty much to have at this particular point in life. And Venus is focused on long term goals, creative long term goals. So we're talking about things, systems that you want to put into place, but your mindset and your triggers are like, there's no way that you're ever going to be able to do this. You're not good enough to do this. You're not smart enough to do this. I'm not saying either of those things, by the way, but your emotional triggers and your negative mindset are. Now, we could look at this as an attack on ourselves, or we could look at this as this is a lesson. This is happening to me for a reason. What is that reason? We don't need to be in a negative mindset. No matter what the challenge is, no matter what is going on in our lives, no matter who did what to us, we do not need to be in a negative mindset. We have the power to make a choice to say, excuse me, mind, brain, you work for me. And I don't want to hear you talking like that. And we have to remind the brain over and over again, hey, we don't live there anymore. We don't have a negative mindset. Negative mindset doesn't help us achieve those goals, right? But also, there's an interesting layer to this. You may have some goals, very creative, very feminine goals that you want to accomplish. And it seems like everything is getting in the way of that. No matter where you look, there's another obstacle. And there may be a reason why. Because as we move into Thursday, that T square still exists. That fight with your negative mindset and achieving those goals still exists. But the moon also moves into a grand sextile with the sun, which is focused on career, but most importantly, Jupiter, which is focused on long-term goals, specifically the growth and expansion of long-term goals. Now, this is more of a masculine influence from both influences. But what could be happening is that the goals that you're focused on, the timing's just not right. You need to let it, it's like making soup. You put all the ingredients into the pot with some water, obviously, because you need that in order to make soup, right? Now, as soon as you throw all of the ingredients into the pot with the soup, you can't eat it. It's not ready. It has to simmer for a while. All the ingredients have to meld together to create that beautiful, yummy broth that's in the soup. And then, of course, you don't want hard, crunchy vegetables or raw chicken. Definitely don't want to eat that, right? So you're not going to eat the soup as soon as you throw it all in the pot. You're going to let it marinate. You're going to let it simmer. You're going to let it fuse together into this yummy chicken soup, right? And that's what Jupiter is saying. Let that one marinate for a bit, and let's focus on growth and expansion of this other goal, this specifically around your career. And by doing that, you are giving that other goal power to continue to marinate. As we get into Friday, the moon moves into a square with Mercury. Now, Mercury is focused on career also, and the moon's focus is on self. So, this is like trying to be successful at work while you're feeling a bit emotional. It's like having PMS and trying to act normal while you're at work. It's not always easy to do. In fact, it's quite a challenge most of the time, right? So instead of getting frustrated with yourself and fighting with yourself because you're just unable to overcome it, embrace it. Embrace your femininity. Instead of getting mad because you're emotional, how about you create something out of that emotion that helps you to be successful at work, right? Now, some of the best things in the world were created because women were emotional at the time. Think about it. At the beginning of women in the workforce, there were no tampons and maxi pads in the bathroom. Nobody cared. Nobody cared if a woman needed one of those. But women went into the workplace and women have cycles. And all of a sudden, women would have meltdowns because they forgot to bring a Tampax with them or they forgot to bring a maxi pad with them. And they go, oh my God. And it's emotional, this emotional meltdown. But one woman somewhere took that emotional meltdown and said, you know what? We need machines with tampons and maxi pads in them so that if we get stuck in this situation at work, we can do something about this. We can protect ourselves so we don't have to leave work and skip out on pay. You see, there is brilliance in those emotional meltdowns. And sometimes those emotional meltdowns create something that can be very helpful in the workspace. And at the same time, the moon is still in a trine with Jupiter, which is all about expanding those long term goals. And Jupiter sits in Cancer. Cancer is an extremely creative sign, okay? And when it comes to that level of creativity, it's also can be extremely emotional because both planets, of course, are in water signs, which are very, very emotional. So, but again, that emotion is creativity. So, if you can't focus on work, focus on those goals. It helps to shift your focus to something that's a little bit more doable and therefore changes the way that you're trying to motivate yourself instead of beating yourself up because you just can't seem to do it, if that makes sense. Some days, some days I just can't focus. I can't. And there's usually a reason. Something else is wanting my focus and I'm avoiding it. I'm emotional about something. Yes, I do get emotional from time to time, even though I'm an Aquarius and I pretend I'm not. I do get emotional about things, right? And sometimes I just can't focus on work. I have to focus my energy on something else. That focusing my energy on something else helps me to feel better so I can shift my focus back to work and continue and put myself in a position to be successful for the rest of the day or if nothing else to get through the damn day. Knight of Wands in reverse. The Knight of Wands in reverse indicates delays, need for patience, and aggression. Now, when you're impatient, a lot of times impatience creates aggression. So, patience, of course, is something that we all have to learn, and it's probably one of the hardest things to learn. And we usually don't learn it until we get older. Um, but the delays are around what we were talking with Venus and these creative goals. This is exactly what I'm talking about. when there are delays, we get really frustrated, and we that frustration tends to just kind of sort of take over. So we want to avoid that by shifting our focus in another direction, and that helps minimize that frustration and that aggression. So that's what I have for you. And next is Kailin. Welcome, Kailin, to the group, to the list. And what a great time for you to start, as we got some moon action in Scorpio, which is really shaking things up this week, specifically as it comes into Scorpio on Wednesday, and bringing emotional triggers with it, which is not exactly something that we're all like, oh, yay, I'm so excited for, right? Nobody's ever excited for that. Nobody wants to deal with emotional triggers. Guess what? We all have them. They all pop up at the most inconvenient time. They're always going to pop up at the most inconvenient time. We can either be frustrated and mad and fight against it, which is exhausting and not going to do you any good, or we can embrace what these triggers are teaching us. We can embrace what our feelings are teaching us. Emotions are here for a reason. And some of us are more emotional than others. It's true. But most of the time, the overly emotional people are overly emotional because they can't let go. Okay. And it's not about letting go as much as it's making the choice to be emotional or not to be emotional. And sometimes that's harder than it is others. It's not like a switch, like a light switch that you obviously switch on and off, although for many people they can. That is a possibility. But we have to, the biggest thing I think is embracing how we feel, because it teaches us something about who we are as people. So on Wednesday, the moon comes into Scorpio, bringing emotional triggers to the surface. And on top of that, moves into what's called a T square with Pluto and Venus, which is a pretty big challenge. It's the big old triangle, the three of them not really getting along. Venus's focus is on long term goals, creative long term goals, while Pluto's focus is on mindset. And with Pluto being retrograde, it's hard to change that mindset. Now, mindset is everything, and emotional triggers definitely change our mindset. So, if you start off with a very uber positive mindset and something triggers you, that uber positive mindset all of a sudden disappears and you've got a negative mindset. Then you go from being super excited about these goals and what you want to accomplish, and then your brain goes into this, I don't know why you ever thought you could do that, because there's just no way that you're going to accomplish that goal. It's too much. It's too big. It's too heavy. It's too blah, 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 blah. Right? And then we get the stinking thinking thing going on. So not only are we being emotionally triggered, but we're also stuck in our heads feeling like we're never going to get out of this nightmare. Okay. Of feeling like we are not good enough to be able to achieve this goal. Right. Now, as we move into Thursday, that continues, but we add another layer to it because the moon moves into a grand sextile with the sun and Jupiter. Now, the sun's focus is on career, success in career, shining in your career, while Jupiter is also focused on long term goals. And it's all about growth and expansion of those long term goals. Now, we can take this one of two ways. One, you have two separate goals, and the creative one, the one that you want to focus on, you just can't right now. It needs to germinate. You planted the seed. It needs to grow. It needs to create roots so that it has a nice strong root stock, right? You don't want a tree that has one little single root. That tree is going to fall over, right? You want to give it time to create a nice strong root stock. So you shift your focus from that goal to a different goal, one that is more structured, one that it revolves more around career and money and not so much creativity. And know that the creative goal is It is not that it is not achievable, but you need money in order to achieve it, in order to add to it so that you can achieve it. So you focus on a more structured, career centered financial goal instead. And Jupiter's growth and expansion properties really help with this, because that's what Jupiter is all about. It's all about growing something and making it bigger. That's why Jupiter is so big. He's all about as big as you can get. The sky is the limit there, right? As we move into Friday, the moon's focus is on self, and it makes you a bit emotional, but he moves into a square with Mercury. Now we're no longer having that big T square challenge anymore. That's done and gone. But this square with Mercury, here we are trying to expand on our career goals. And now we have a square with Mercury, which is focused on career. Where I'm emotional, I can't focus on getting my job done. This just changes everything. But does it? Because the moon is still in a trine with Jupiter, which is all about growth and expansion. So maybe this is about how you feel complementing what you do. We as women need to stop running from being emotional, especially when it comes to business. When women first got into business some 40 some odd years ago, they knew that the only way that they were going to be able to do it was to be like men, which means non emotional. But sometimes it's that emotional part of us that's necessary for growth. Think about it. You have a leader who's a dictator going around telling everybody what to do. And if he doesn't like what you do, off with your head. Okay. The history is full of those leaders. Okay. Or you have a queen instead of a king. She doesn't want to go off lopping heads. She doesn't want to go around demanding that everybody does what she wants either. She understands people. She cares for people. She doesn't tolerate any wrongdoing or any injustice against herself or her friends. But she's not going to punish them by lopping their heads off either. She's going to sit down and she's going to talk to them and she's going to say, you know what, I'm very disappointed in you. I expected more from you. She's going to try that tactic first. And the last resort is going to be off their heads, right? Women care. Women nurture. This is all of our emotions. Emotions are not just anger and sadness. It's caring. It's nurturing. It's loving. It's happiness. It's sweetness. There's so many different emotions. We can't keep looking at emotions as being a bad thing. And I feel like in this particular instance for you, this is what's necessary. It's like you're not getting along with somebody at work. You cannot see eye to eye. It's frustrating. You want to lash out. But actually, what this person needs is a shoulder, is somebody to listen to them, is not necessarily somebody to give advice, but somebody to just sit with them so that they know that they're not alone in the world dealing with this. You know this because it's probably something that you've dealt with before. And rather than getting swept up with your feelings and swept up with the emotion, instead, you be the emotional rock that helps other people understand themselves and their emotions and what they're going through, if that makes sense. Yes, it's a tall order, but that's what we do, right? That's our job as women, is to be the nurturers and the caregivers. And sometimes that's what's necessary, even in the workplace. We have the upside down tower. Good thing it's upside down, because upside down, you're just stuck in a rut, which is annoying. Okay. And for a fixed sign, not surprising either. Fixed signs get stuck in a rut pretty easily. honestly, because fixed signs don't like change. They avoid change like the plague. And because they're avoiding change, they get stuck in a rut very easily. So it's time to shake things up. It's time to change things a little bit so that you're not so much stuck in a rut and feeling that boredom. We need a little bit of excitement every now and then to counteract that boredom. Go to some place new. Do something that you've always wanted to do that you just haven't done yet. Anything to kick up things a notch so that it feels like you're not, or it doesn't feel like you're stuck doing the same thing over and over again every single day. And that's creativity is very emotional as well. So that is what I have for you. Moving on to Peg. Focus is on the past this week, and the moon comes into Sagittarius right at the end of the week on Saturday. Focus on the past. Why would we even focus on the past? It feels like, or at least we're taught, that focusing on the past does nothing for us. We're stuck in the past. We're not moving forward, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of things to learn from our past experiences. That focusing on the past is extremely valuable. It just depends on how you spend the time focusing on the past, right? Are you learning from your past experiences, or are you wallowing in your past experiences? That's always the question that we have to ask ourselves, right? Um, I see around this someone from the past presenting themselves, which sparks this journey down the past, if that makes sense. And where we tend to go wrong with that is looking at all of the mistakes that we made, because we're so busy focused and wallowing on all the mistakes that we made. We're not really paying attention to all of the achievements that we've made. A good balance of that is necessary. Too much focus on achievements and we become arrogant and a little too full of ourselves. Too much focus on our mistakes and we start to degrade ourselves and beat ourselves up. Balance is always important, right? I did really good over here, needed to improve over here. Let's use that to build what we're working on currently right now, right? The moon coming into Sagittarius is interesting. On one hand, the moon moves into a T square with the sun and Mercury both focused on career. The moon's focus is on self, so it's making you a bit emotional. In a challenge with the sun and Mercury, which are focused on career, and Uranus, which is focused on relationships. It's a you against the world kind of a thing, which is very uncomfortable and nobody wants to deal with. However, if you look at it from a different view, sometimes you against the world is necessary. Sometimes you have to fight to be Peg and to stand gloriously in who Peg is, regardless of what anybody says about it. So we go into career, for example, and you go into a place and they say, I like the fact that you do readings, but I want you to do these types of readings. Or, oh, I'm glad that you do healing, but no, I want you to do readings instead. And of course, you're not willing to change what you want to do to suit somebody else, which means that's not a good place for you, right? You have somebody around you that wants to be a friend, but only on their terms. Okay. Again, this is where it's okay for it to be Peg against the world. Okay. This world doesn't want to accept Peg for who she is. So why should Peg accept that world for what it is? Right? Avoid them. Go elsewhere. Um, or Dare we just accept that we have differences and move on? Which is another way of looking at it, too. If only the world could do that, it might actually be a better place. Counterbalancing this drama, we have the moon in a grand trine with Venus, Saturn, and Neptune. Venus is focused on long term goals, specifically creative long term goals. Your writing being one of them. And Saturn and Neptune are focused on those you love. This is bringing these people together to help you, or you bringing people together for a common purpose, right? So let's say, for instance, you join a book club where everybody's writing, not reading, right? And you're encouraging each other to write, what you're writing, and kind of getting together every now and then, and and reading each other's stuff to kind of sort of help each other out in a way. That would be a really cool thing if you could put that together. If it doesn't exist, that would be a really cool thing. The moon is also in a grand sextile with Saturn and Neptune and Pluto. Pluto is focused on the mind and mindset. So it's these emotional thoughts that are actually um, feeding that positive mindset, and those people coming together to help with that as well. So yes, there's a challenge, but I don't think that the challenge is a big deal. I think that the challenge is there because it's trying to show you that what you're trying to pursue may not be the best course of action. And a lot of times when we're pursuing these things for monetary purposes, because we need to make money, we look at it too logically. You need to look at it creatively, which is more difficult and less structured, yes, of course, but we need that creativity. We're women, after all. And it's our job to be creative, and it's our job to harness that creativity. And we can't always do it by ourselves. That's why we build a team, a creative team, to kind of sort of help us harness that. And together, we build buildings. You can't build a castle by yourself, but you get a whole team of builders, and you sure can, right? The Seven of Swords in reverse is the card that I pulled for you today. And the Seven of Swords in this position indicates return of something lost or taken and the resolution of conflicts. This is a very high energy week for you, I think. And I really feel that some of your old mindsets are reversing this week. That some of, maybe the things, in terms of focusing on the past, you're not allowing the past to rule your decisions quite as much as you used to, which is growth, lady, and in big ways. And I think that's just fantastic that you're able to take what you've learned in the past and put that towards what you're currently working on and what you're going to be working on in the future, which is amazing. So good job for you. And that's what I have for you. And finally, Mama Sherri, focus is on the past. And that can be very difficult because a lot of times when we focus on the past, we focus on what is no longer in our present. Most of the time, that's people, um, or our youth, or our figures, or our smooth, wrinkle-free faces, the energy that we had at one time. It's always something that we don't have anymore. And it's really hard to look towards the future and what we could gain from that future if we're so busy focused on what we don't have anymore in the past. The moon comes into Sagittarius right at the very end of the week, focused on self, making you a little bit emotional. And that's not always a bad thing. It is as the moon moves into a T square with the Sun and Mercury, which are both focused on career, and Uranus, which is focused on relationships. And it feels like either you're unable to build those said relationships, or it feels like everybody around you seems to be looking at what you're trying to build and putting it down, which is taking the wind out of your sails and making you feel like you shouldn't be building it. The moon is also in a grand trine with Venus, which is focused on long-term goals, creative long-term goals, and Saturn and Neptune, which are focused on those you love. And it's about building the right people together to create something beautiful, right? You can't always do that by yourself. No matter how hard you try, the beauty of that creation comes from a multitude of different minds, not necessarily just one. The moon is also in a grand sextile with Saturn, Neptune, and Pluto. Pluto is all about mindset and building a positive mindset. Positive mindset definitely works better than a negative mindset, right? And so we're bringing these entities together to work together, right? So that you have the right people, the right ideas, the right creativity, the right everything comes together to build something wonderful and special and comfortable that brings you joy as well as other people. And how we feel about this, being an emotional woman person, is the cherry on top of the whole thing, because it's all about creativity. It's all about what we can make and what we can create. We don't feel small unless we tell ourselves that we're small. We're not big unless we tell ourselves that we're big, right? It's all about our mindset and how we feel in the moment. And yes, our current feelings definitely do have an impact on our mindset. Absolutely, they do. But also, we want to make sure that we address not just making sure that we pump up our egos, but they are healthy egos at the same time. That's what's important. And that healthy ego needs to be fed and it needs to be nurtured, preferably a nice, healthy diet and not a bunch of bullshit, if that makes sense. Seven of Wands is the card that I pulled for you today. And I do believe that this is the victory card. Perseverance, victory, and survival. No matter what, you always persevere. Okay? It doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be you've just solved world hunger, okay? Victories can be big or small. And who defines it as a victory? You do. Nobody else does. You do. If somebody else doesn't see it as a victory, that's their problem, not yours, right? So that's what I have for you. That's what I have for everybody. Thanks so much for hanging out. I will see you guys next week. Make sure you make it a great week, everybody.